Tonight, TV and radio legend David "Diddy" Hamilton, king of the airwaves. David's broadcasting career began in 1959, and since then he has hosted over 12,000 radio shows and more than 1,000 TV programmes. He's often known as Diddy David Hamilton, a nickname given to him by the comedian Ken Dodd. After leaving grammar school, David became a scriptwriter in TV, after which he became an in-vision television announcer for ABC Weekend Television, and the rest is history. He has hosted countless classic TV formats, including Top of the Pops and Seaside Special, and for 6 decades, he has dominated the national radio airwaves too. He hosted the famous BBC Light programme until 1965, and at one point, he could be heard on both BBC Radio 1 and Radio 2 simultaneously. He's also had a very successful career in commercial radio, presenting shows on Capital Gold, Melody FM, and in February 2021. At the height of the pandemic, he started a daily lunchtime show with the hugely popular Boom Radio, a national DAB station aimed at older listeners. He's now the oldest person in the country hosting a daily radio programme, all at the tender age of 83, which this icon of broadcasting proves is just a number. Let's watch the great man in action.
Hello, good evening. Welcome once again to Top of the Pops. Welcome to the #1 pop show with the #1 sounds, Top of the Pops. What about that? That was the JALN band and disco music. Well, that's it. I'll see you on Radio 1 and Radio 2 tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. Don't forget Top of the Pops next Thursday. We leave you this week with a brand new #1 across the nation. They have toppled ABBA. They are Pussycat, and this is Mississippi. Till next week, ta-da! Bye!
What a handsome devil, and he gets a peck on his cheek for his pleasure. Brilliant stuff. It's my great privilege to welcome broadcasting legend David Hamilton to GB News. David, welcome.
That's the best build-up I've ever had. That was fantastic.
Well, I just had to tell the viewers what you've done, and it's amazing.
I've waited 83 years for that. I thought you were going to ask me, does size matter?
Well, we don't have to ask you, do you? You've got a big microphone, I'm told.
Well, I think with a nickname like Diddy David, I'm not the best person to ask. But by the way, there's no truth in the rumour that Ken Dodd gave me that nickname after he saw me in the shower.
I bloody hope not. Perhaps it was quite cold in those showers with the air conditioning on. David, what a career you've had. What's your greatest love, television or radio?
Well, I was part of the radio generation. I lived on a remote farm where I live again now, and we had no television. The radio was our window to the world, and it brought all these exciting sounds into our remote farmhouse. And when I was a boy, I used to imitate some of the people on the radio, and never thought that years later I would actually, be coming out of that radio myself. And I remember the first day I walked into Broadcasting House, and it was so exciting because I could feel the ghosts of all the great broadcasters down the years there. And it was such a great thrill and privilege to work there for the BBC.
So it was your love of radio that created this great interest in the medium. You did voices. So do you think you were a bit of a born broadcaster?
Well, my inspiration was Pete Murray. When I was a boy, I used to listen to Pete Murray on Radio Luxembourg, and he was very funny, had a wonderful voice, but also great sense of humour. And I remember seeing a photograph of him in a magazine called Fab 208. That was the Luxembourg magazine. And he was horse riding in the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. And he was a very handsome man, very tall in the saddle. And I thought, what a glamorous job that is. That's what I'd like to do. And I told my friends at school, because I went to a grammar school, as you mentioned, in Surrey. And I said to them, when I leave school, I'm going to be a broadcaster. And they said, what, you, with your South London accent, how are you going to do that? So what I did was I hired a Grundig tape recorder. They were huge things.
Reel to reel?
Yeah, couple of spools. And I read things into it and I heard them back and I got rid of the rough edges of my voice.
So you gave yourself elocution lessons?
I gave myself elocution lessons. And I was very lucky because I was doing my national service in the RAF and I got posted to Germany. And that was the home of the British Forces Network radio station in Cologne. So I went to see the boss there and I said, could you use me on your station? And he said, well, we do need somebody to read the football results. So that was the first thing I did in 1959. And I went to him very cheekily one day and I said, all this music that you play, Bing Crosby and Peggy Lee, it's fine for the officers, but the troops want rock and roll. And I don't think he knew what rock and roll was. But he said, how do you know? I said, because I am a troop. So he said, I'll tell you what, we'll give you a show on a Sunday afternoon. We'll see how it does. So Sunday afternoons, I played the music of Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis,
Amazing.
Elvis Presley, who, by the way, was doing his national service at the same time in the US Army in Germany. He was in Frankfurt, I think,
right?
and I was in Cologne. And the troops loved it, of course, and the boss was so embarrassed about playing this heathen music that he followed it with a speech by the Padre. So the Padre came on afterwards and cleansed their sins for listening to rock and roll.
It's remarkable, isn't it? What do you think makes for a great broadcaster?
I think really, looking back, the key is that you're talking to one person, particularly with radio. You're not addressing a group of person, it's very much one-to-one. And if you have a person in mind, it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman, I just think it's a friend. Because if they're listening to you, they like you, presumably, and they are a friend. So that's what I'm doing. And it's a very funny thing, isn't it, to go into a room on your own and talk to an inanimate object.
Yeah.
But I've done it for 60 years now, so the microphone to me has become like an umbilical cord.
You've had a long career. You should be on a beach somewhere. Why are you still working?
I love it. I love it. When we were in lockdown, Boom Radio contacted me.
National DAB station.
National DAB
250,000
station.
listeners a week.
Yeah, thank you. And they said to me, we're launching this radio station for boomers. Would you like to be part of it?
And a boomer is somebody that I guess was born after the war, so
Yeah.
you'd be looking at 60 plus in age?
Yes, 60 plus. So they said, everybody's broadcasting from home. I said, well, I don't have a studio. So they said, we'll give you one. So they gave me a microphone, headphones, all the music on computer, and I do lunchtime every day. I live on a farm, so it's wonderful. You know, the window's open, you can hear the birds singing, and it's just great. No travel, no COVID worries, broadcasting from home.
And you're working with some fantastic other radio legends like
Yes.
Nicky Horn and Graham Dean.
Yes, who are both at Capitol, and lots of old pals and lots of old colleagues of mine. And they're just really a bunch of radio enthusiasts who've put this station together, and the audience has embraced it, which is wonderful.
Are young people allowed to listen to it?
Oh, yes. And we've actually found that a lot of young people really like it because, you know, Mark, a lot of that music is timeless. And when you go back, if you think of the 60s, you think of the Beatles, the Stones, Motown, absolutely.
Incredible.
You know, it really, the golden
A hit
age of
factory.
music. Yeah, and it never dates. So we've actually got a lot of, you know, what would you call them? Pre-boomers, or are they post-boomers?
Yeah, they're also
post-boomers.
Post-boomers, and they're sometimes known as young fogies, aren't they?
Well, I wouldn't call them that.
No, tweed-wearing 20-somethings. But I think that, obviously, you know, people have got their preferred decade for music, but
Yeah.
the 60s and 70s, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
I think the thing about 60s and 70s music was it was very happy, it was very bright and optimistic, and you could sing along to it. And it's just a very happy era. A lot of the music, we do play some new music. We have a new record every hour. And obviously we pick them carefully so that they appeal to our age group. And sometimes you get artists like, you know, Elton John, Rod Stewart, who are making new records. Sometimes you get new people as well, like the guy who's just been in Eurovision, Sam Ryder.
Yeah.
But mainly it's late 50s, so it's rock and roll, 60s and 70s, and maybe a little bit of 80s. And generally, if you get back later than that, the music changed an awful lot. Some of the modern stuff, to be honest, is a bit depressing, isn't it?
Well, it's very commercial, isn't it?
Yeah.
Generic, corporate,
Yeah.
soulless.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You feel like it's either been generated by a computer or a committee or both.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I obviously I was broadcasting through the Beat era, and I did one of the first television interviews with the Beatles, 1963, when they'd had about 2 hit records. And I interviewed them, Brian Epstein, their manager, Jerry and the Pacemakers, who were the first band to have 3 consecutive #1s in the UK, and the Beatles. And they were quite tricky. You know, John Lennon particularly had a rather prickly wit.
Yeah.
And I think he saw me as a sort of posh southerner. You know, it was all that using the tape recorder, wasn't it?
Yes.
Learning to talk proper.
Of course.
But later that year, I introduced them in concert in Manchester. And I remember tickets to see the Beatles were 10 shillings in old money.
Imagine.
The show was done in a marquee, and when I introduced them, the audience, which was, you know, teenage girls, stormed the marquee. I thought it was going to collapse.
Yeah, remarkable.
Yeah.
And did you, I mean, the first time you heard the Beatles and when you interviewed them for the first time, did you feel that you were in the presence of greatness?
Well, I didn't realise quite how big they were going to be. You know, it was just before Beatlemania came along. But it was obvious that they were...
When you interviewed them, had Love Me Do their first single come out?
Love Me Too, Love Me Do, and I think possibly Please Please Me.
Right, so they were on their way up, but they hadn't quite gone crazy yet.
No, they hadn't. I don't think they'd had a number one at that time.
So John was a bit chippy, a bit prickly, a bit gobby.
Yeah, a bit
what about
gobby.
Paul? How was Paul?
Paul was okay. Ringo was very nice, and George, of course, was the quiet one.
Yeah.
The following year, I must tell you, I introduced the Stones in concert. And I remember it very well because I had a little red MGB sports car, which was very fashionable at the time. And I parked it at the back of the theatre, as you could in those days. Somebody thought it was Mick Jagger's car and scratched a love note on it. So for a week, I was driving around with I love you, Mick, on the bonnet of my car. Very embarrassing.
I'd have kept that forever. What a badge of honour. How different was working in TV and radio in the 60s as opposed to now?
Well, there were very few channels. When I started as an in-vision television announcer, which again you mentioned, ABC in Manchester, there were only 2 channels. And on Sunday nights, ABC had a blockbuster schedule. They had Armchair Theatre, which was great drama, British actors. They had Sunday Night at the London Palladium, great variety, top stars coming over from America.
Hosted by the likes of Bruce Forsyth.
Jimmy Tarbuck, and people like that, They had The Avengers, which was a cult series.
Massive.
And Maverick, the Western. So what happened was that on Monday morning, everybody went to work talking about the same programmes that they had seen the night before, which wouldn't happen now because there are so many different channels. So television at that time was very, very big. And even as an announcer, you know, appearing between the programmes, you would be asked to go and open shops and fetes and things like that. So it was a great time to be in television.
And you're still going strong. Your voice is as mellifluous and well-spoken as ever. That QC that you taught yourself, the received pronunciation is still in place.
Yeah.
You have had a brush with illness. Are you feeling better?
Yes, I had a blood test, a routine blood test, and discovered that I had a very rare form of blood cancer. It's a thing called polycythemia vera. They all have these complicated names, but it's PV for short. Basically, what it means is that you've got too many red blood cells, and that's not healthy because you could have a stroke or a heart attack. So the answer is you have venesection. So you go to hospital like you're a blood donor, and you give. I've been giving blood regularly.
You're dumping blood as much as possible.
Yeah,
really.
But nobody wants it. Nobody wants my blood because
I'll take your blood.
It's too red.
I'll set it on eBay.
And I'm too old. But what's happened is that I brought my red cell count down to what is now a healthy level. But I take chemotherapy pills, which mean I do get a little bit tired. So this is actually after my bedtime now, so I've stayed up late for you, Mark.
Well, I'm so glad you've stayed up late, and there's no evidence of any fatigue whatsoever. You're still going strong. And it's a curious illness because it manifested itself in effectively a suntan. So everyone was telling you how great you looked.
Well, I do now actually have a suntan, but even before I had the suntan, yes, I had a message from Richard Littlejohn, you know, writes for the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
It's a good pal of mine. And he said, your favourite record now should be Rosie by Tom Partridge.
Brilliant.
He said, goes with your complexion.
Yeah. But, well, look, I'm so glad that you're back on the path to recovery. And, of course, you're beaming, you're glowing with joy at the moment because your beloved Fulham FC have been promoted to the Premier League.
Yes.
And, of course, you've been the announcer at the stadium for many years. Do you still do the announcements?
No, I did it for 18 years. And I did it actually in the dugout. And in the middle of winter, it became very, very cold. Basically, I was freezing my nuts off in the middle of winter. And so I handed over the microphone to a younger man. But I was very lucky because we had 18 wonderful seasons. We had 3 promotions. Brilliant. We had a Europa final in Hamburg where I warmed up the crowd. I must tell you this, on a cherry picker high above the crowd. And the cherry picker packed up, wouldn't move, and I was stuck up there.
Oh, no.
And I don't like heights. So
disaster.
Can you imagine that?
So you had to style it out.
Well, the awful thing about it was that part of it, the cage was open at the side, and something in me made me think, I think I want to jump off. And I thought, my God, if I do this in front of a full house in Hamburg, it'd be a hell of a way to go. And then I thought, yeah, but I don't want to go yet.
No, well, look, I mean, definitely not. That's another brush with misfortune over which you have clearly prevailed. You are a bit of a survivor, aren't you, in life and in career?
Well, I think so. I think if you survive 60 plus years in this business, you are lucky. And either that or just stubborn and won't take a hint.
Well, also, I don't know if you can be lucky for 6 decades. You've obviously got a great talent. And how important is it to sort of get on with the people that you work with, the people around you?
Well, I'm very lucky now because I'm not just saying this, but I'm working with the nicest people now that I've worked with in my career. So if this is my last job, then it will finish on a very, very happy note. I've worked for nice people. I've worked for some not quite so nice people. Yeah. But I guess that's life, isn't it? You know.
The media is cutthroat. Have you ever had your heart broken professionally?
Yes, I did. When I left Radio 1, I was very happy at Radio 1, and BBC moved me to Radio 2. At one point, I think you mentioned this, my show was on both.
Yeah.
Because of an economy move, and then they got the money back, and I moved to Radio 2. And Radio 2 was not in those days what it became later. And I was very, very happy at Radio 1. And
Radio 1 was where it was at. That was prime time, by comparison.
And the thing was at that particular...
The Premier League.
Yeah, and the thing at that particular time was that pop music appealed to all age groups. Yeah. So from grandparents to grandchildren, everybody sat round the television every week watching Top of the Pops and watching as a family, you know. So, they were great times.
What a career, which continues on Boom Radio.
On Boom Radio, thank you.
Back on air on Monday at midday?
Midday till 2.
Fantastic stuff. The voice, the looks, the suit, it's all still there. My profound thanks to David Hamilton, a broadcasting legend. Lots more to come after this. US Showbiz...